What you haven't explained is how you can make one promise in one month and then completely change it the next. What happened in that month where you had this sudden explosion of vision?
Again, Kerry, people will make their own judgments about me, and
but I'd like you to explain it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Tony Abbott feels with conviction we will not have a new tax. In any way, shape or form, we won't have a new tax. A month later, you do.
Well, you know, again, Kerry, I know politicians are going to be judged on everything they say, but sometimes in the heat of discussion, you go a little bit further than you would if it was an absolutely calm, considered, prepared, scripted remark, which is one of the reasons why the statements that need to be taken absolutely as gospel truth is those carefully prepared, scripted remarks.
So every time you make a statement, we have to ask you whether it's carefully prepared and scripted or whether it's just something on the fly.
Look,
seriously, this is a very serious question.
But all of us, Kerry, all of us, when we're in the heat of verbal combat, so to speak, will sometimes say things that go a little bit further.
Mr. Abbott, we're not all leaders of major political parties who are either Prime Minister or aspiring to be.
True.
Would you agree that there is extra onus on you to be accurate and honest and make promises that can be trusted?
Absolutely right.
But that time you couldn't.
No, but the thing is, I made a statement in a radio interview in February, and then I think in March I made a commitment to paid parental leave. Now,
which was the opposite of what you'd said a month before.
Well, it wasn't absolutely consistent with what I said the month before.
It was the opposite. One month you say no new tax, the next month you say a $2.7 billion tax.
But this is an argument that we could well have had in March, and we did have it in March, and a lot of people pointed out back then that there was a bit of inconsistency, and I accept that.
But this business about times when what you say can be believed or trusted and times when we should accept that it's not necessarily the truth. It makes it very hard for people. I mean, if we go back...
If you gave an Andrew Olley lecture, that would obviously be the distilled essence of what Kerry O'Brien thinks on a particular issue.
But I'll say again, I'm not aspiring to be the Prime Minister of Australia no matter what I say. But what you are saying is that the public are not going to know from one day to the next when you are saying something that's absolutely rock solid and when it's not. Are there two Tony Abbotts, the real Tony Abbott and the Tony Abbott who tailors what he has to say to whatever audience he has in front of him? We've talked about, I'll say this quickly, we've talked about the time you told the audience in a Victorian country town that the climate change argument was quite absolute crap. And then you told me later that you were just being loose with your language. It didn't represent my true position, you said. How are we to know when we're hearing your true position and when you're fudging the truth?
I mean, people will make their judgments of me, Kerry, and I accept that, and I understand that. And some of them will say, aha, he said this in a radio interview in February, and then a month later in March, he made a commitment on paid parental leave, which is not completely consistent with that former statement.
It was the opposite. It was the opposite of the first statement, Mr. Abbott.
And some people, Kerry, will judge me very harshly
about
that.
But I'd like to hear you acknowledge this. It wasn't just a little bit different, it was the complete opposite. One was no new tax, the other was a new tax of $2.7 billion within a month.